We're all set.
Welcome. My name is Rodney Gibson. I'm a Chicago-based musician and composer. I'm a board member of the Healing Academy. And we want to take a moment to honor our male ancestors who passed on and who helped us get to where we are today. We'll take 30 seconds, moment of silence. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Healing Academy. We are a holistic arts and education-based nonprofit. Everything we say today is from love. We're safe, we're free, we come from love, no judgment, speak your piece, have respect for each other. Now, our mission statement. Our mission is to transform urban communities by offering education for the entire family that inspires solid minds, transform whole bodies, and rebirths the full soul. The pillars that we stand on: social emotional learning, literacy, history, spirituality, visual and performing art, health. Our founders are Vice President Dion Victoria and our President Natalie Battles. And about this program today, it's a heart-to-heart panel discussion between fathers and sons to find common ground, understanding, and healing from generational trauma. And this is why this event is important to me. Growing up in Detroit as a musician, it was a different time in the 60s and 70s. It was really tight communities. We didn't, not only did we have our fathers, but we had fathers and mothers up and down the block. And I don't see those same patterns of social fabric. So this is, even I have a daughter, but I have sons that I mentor and teach music to. So this is a concern for me. So hopefully we can rebuild and strengthen our social fabric. Introduction to, I want to introduce Andre Russell, who helped put this event together and who couldn't be here today. But his work was, and pulling the panelists and the ideas together was instrumental and very vital. And here we are. We'll introduce Andre.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Father and Son, a heart-to-heart about manhood. My name is Andre C. Russell, and I am one of the board members for the Healing Academy. Unfortunately, I could not be a part of the live broadcast, but I insisted on being a part of this program and introduce our very awesome host. But first, I would like to break down what this program means to me and its purpose. Even though I am not biologically anyone's father, I do pride myself on having the responsibility of being the best male role model I can be for so many of our youth. So whether it's being called Big Bro, Big Unc, or just Mr. Russell, the responsibility as a man to help make an impressionable and positive impact on the youth, particularly to young men, is very, very important to me. And I'm so proud to have taken up this walk and responsibility. On a personal note, and full transparency, I grew up with a somewhat tense relationship with my own father. Not really knowing how to verbally connect with him or communicate my feelings or anything, I never really got a chance to fully explore and benefit from getting to know him beyond the discipline or the stories. But I do have memories, and those mean everything to me. To this day, it is at the foundation of everything that I do, to give honor to his memory so that he will always be proud of me. On another note, I was blessed with two grandfathers, T.C. Smith and Alvin Smith, uncles, and a plethora of men that became mentors and learning points for my life. From academic mentors like Professor Armstead Allen and the late Charlie Martin, these men taught me the value of learning about my history and culture with a critical thinking perspective and a zest for creativity and a Renaissance applications for the community. Spiritual influences like Pastor Jasper Edwards, past Grandmaster Emeritus Anthony Pugh, and so many other men, including our host for today, that I encountered in my travels have been empowering for me with a better understanding of God and spirituality and temperance to be able to handle a lot of things in life. I even created a platform to help highlight and give respects to fathers and other good men that are like fathers, with tributes and even a memorial award of recognition. I did this to help shine a light on others too humble and to those that do not feel the need to say, look at me. They just do. That's very important. Which is why when I was asked to join, or actually join the board for the National Healing Academy, they wanted to promote this event for the brothers. And I definitely wanted to be a part of this in any capacity. I wanted it to be lights, camera, action. I wanted Barack Obama. I wanted pyrotechnics. I wanted everything, but it wasn't in the budget, of course. I just wanted it to be spectacular. I want to show the community, our community, the beauty, strength, and wisdom of our men. Qualities that are often lost in the struggle of some very real stressors. I wanted to highlight some truly good brothers who have been a voice and deserve to be heard. And that phrase in the title, A Heart to Heart About Manhood, is very important. I want us to be able to see, hear, and feel what is in the hearts of these men, because what is in their hearts resonates with a lot of us, and that is a beautiful thing. So with that, allow me to introduce the host. Looking at the numbers, I can honestly say that I've known him for about half my life, about 20 years or more now, and we have had our fair share of adventures. He has entertained me, he has challenged me, he has fought me, not physically, because I know with his extensive knowledge of WWE moves, I wouldn't stand a chance. But more importantly, he has taught me, supported me, and comforted me, even through my most recent tragedies in life. And I would like to say that I have been there for him as well. More than that, this good brother is a great father. And I have watched him help raise some brilliant minds and great children over the years. And as they start to branch off into their own prospective places in this world, I know for a fact that he has definitely poured into them the academics, the street smarts, the heart, and the will to be successful and to be leaders. I won't dive into too much of his history, but I can tell you this. He is a man of faith, of action, and passion. He is a dedicated libertarian and theologian, and unapologetically Black nationalist. He received his undergraduate degree in inner city studies with a minor in sociology from Northeastern Illinois University and a master's of divinity from Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary with a concentration in African American church leadership. Currently, he is an itinerant elder, I said it right without stuttering, with the African American Methodist Church and a pastor of Bethel AME Church in Champaign, Illinois, who sits on several community boards, including the Champaign Country Christian Health Center, the CU Trauma and Resilient Organization, and HV Neighborhood Transformation. He is a very good brother, and I thank him so much for being a part of this program. Please welcome Mr. Terrence Thomas.
Good afternoon, everyone. As indicated, I'm trying to get this camera right because I'm sharing space. I am the Reverend Terrence Thomas, pastor of Bethel AME Champaign. It is so good to be here. First, I got to thank my man Andre. We go back 20-something years, the Olive Harvey battles, the Black Studies battles, and in many ways, we pushed each other to be better men, better fathers, better role models in the community. So I want to say thank you. I want to thank the Healing Academy for this opportunity to come on and moderate this timely conversation around fathers and sons and fatherhood in general, manhood. However you want to put a label on it, it's critical. We know the truth of the matter. Our community is desperate need of a positive, non-toxic masculine energy. Our community is in desperate need of a kind of manhood that shows up and shows out. Even if we look at the current context and the modern movements, it's largely women led. As a pastor, I can tell you that there are no men in the church and there are no men present. And something happened. And I don't operate in the space of anti-Blackness. I won't say it's some kind of deficiency. I will say something simply happened where we're not transmitting messages. And so this is an opportunity for us to gather. So this evening, I'm joined by a couple of guests. Now, I don't do long bios. I let people introduce themselves because you get the reading bios. But my first guest, I am going to introduce because in many ways, he was the first person that truly taught me how to love and think beyond myself. Imagine, if you will, one day looking down on a beautiful face as a 21-year-old junior in college, not knowing what to do, and you see your wonderful son, your first heir. That's what I call my children, heirs and heirs, your first heir. And so this afternoon, I am joined in this conversation by my number one son, my ride or die, Centrell Hawkins Thomas. Say hello to the people, boyo.
Hey everyone, I'm Centrell Hawkins Thomas. Like you said, I'm his first born son. And yeah, I've made him be a father for almost 25 years now. So
25 years, a quarter of a century. And next up will be joining us his brother, Brian Gorman, who's going to tell his story, introduce himself, and tell you how he shows up in the world. Brother Brian, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Brian Gorman. I am the publisher of Gorman House Publishing, where we tell our own stories. So I also have a marketing company, and we also do some politic work. But for the most part, I'm talking about Gorman House Publishing today because our whole mission with Gorman House Publishing is to make sure that we tell our stories and then to also create an alternative narrative to what we see in mainstream media. And one of those things is that Black men are not present in their lives of their kids, and that's not true. So I'm here today as a father. I don't unfortunately have any sons, but I'm a mentor to a lot of men and young men. So with that being said, you know, I'm here with a little perspective that I can give from a father of a daughter and also, you know, as a mentor. So I'm here, I'm ready to pour out whatever you all need. And, you know, there's my piece.
Indeed. Thank you, Brother Brian. We thank you for that. So I'm going to start with you, and then I'm going to go with Centrell, and then I'll answer it. If you don't mind, if you are able, share with us your relationship with your father or father figure.
Interesting. I grew up with my father. That's the best way that I can put it. My parents had me when they were young. So in retrospect, you know, as you become an older adult, you start looking at your parents' decisions and, you know, the things that they've made over the course of time. And, you know, my father was a young man. So some of the things that I learned from him was by example, and some of that was what not to do. Because, you know, as he stumbled, I was there to see it. And so his lesson was best taught to me through example. So with my father, my parents divorced when I was young and they separated. And as a result of that, my relationship with my father was a little strained. Not that I didn't have one, I did have one, but it wasn't as close as it would have been if he would have been in the home. And at the same time, he was, you know, growing up. He had me at 18 years old. So so I got a chance to learn a lot through his eyes, you know, as a father. And that's what molded me to be the father that I am today, his example, what to do and what not to do. And that was passed down from my grandfather. You know, the one thing that I do know that as a Black male that I'm just now starting to learn is that sometimes we bottle up our trauma so that we can continue to be strong. And there's a long-term effect of that we don't necessarily see until many years later. So, you know, I just built a relationship with my grandfather stronger because he started seeking counseling to get healing from issues that he had from being a World War II veteran. And so with him being a World War II veteran, he came back, he had to be strong. So he bottled up a lot. And as a result of that, he didn't know how to let out some of that pain. So he was a mean guy. At least I thought he was mean, but he was always there for me if I needed him. but he was always, it seemed like he was mean, you know? And it wasn't until he got in his 90s and started going to the VA hospital and they started working with him that he was able to express to me what he went through. And I was able to connect with him. And that was the first time that I was able to understand him. And through understanding him, I was able to understand my father. So I'm like, okay, now I understand why my father is like this. And now I can understand more of how I am the way I am based upon those generations of fathers that I was able to see. So I hope that answered your question.
It did. Thank you for sharing your family history. Number one, how would you describe our relationship? Now, I don't want the people to think that I'm forcing him to answer, so I'm gonna look over here while he answers, and when he's done, I'm gonna turn away. What is our relationship like?
We just move the camera so he won't, so y'all won't think he's secretly judging me, even though deep down I know he's secretly judging me. But to describe my relationship with my father, it's a pretty good one because all my life, every time I look up, I've always known that he was there. Like for the most important stuff in my life, he was there. And I didn't really know this until I got a little older, and I started meeting a little bit more people. That's a big blessing, especially from a guy who had me at 21, still living with his own parents for a while. That's a big thing to still be able to be there, even though he was trying to figure out his own life still. So I say our relationship is still pretty good, still strong as it's ever been, and yeah. Anytime he needs help with something, he knows that I'm the first one to be there, even if it's not by force, which is not as often, but I digress. We have a pretty great relationship, I would say. All right, I can speak to the people.
Indeed, thank you. I'm shocked to hear him say that. I'll talk about why later on. So like you, Brian, I had a father that would have been considered a baby boomer, born 45, Southern black man. My understanding later in life that the guy that was raised to be my grandfather, that I was raised as grandfather, wasn't his dad. And so that would shed light later on. But my father wasn't affectionate. He wasn't loving. He was a disciplinarian. Like, you knew he loved you, and he'll say it if pressed, but he was the executioner, man. My nickname for him was the Bear, because that's how he appeared in the world. My relationship with my father, who was a Chicago police officer, who was a community activist, who was a Vietnam vet, it was grounded in what we had turned in the African American community, this healthy fear of our children. So I knew if he came on the scene, it was either going to go very good, he was bringing something fun, some treats, something laughing, or your day was about to get very hard. So I can count on both hands the time that he said, "I love you." I can count on both hands the times in which he was affectionate, hugging on him. You know, that just wasn't who he was. Now, he did show love. He taught me how to fish. I ain't been fishing in 30 years, but I still remember those lessons. We would get out there and mow the lawn. He would show me how to fix things. He was deaf on household structure. So boys wasn't in the kitchen cooking and stuff. They was outside raking leaves, taking out garbage. So we bonded in that way. But my dad was hella hard on me, like to a point where I didn't understand it. I thought he didn't like me. And it wasn't until literally 2 weeks before he died in 2006 of MS and cancer, that he said, "I was hard on you because I thought you were brilliant. And I didn't know any other way to make you operate in your gifts." And so we started having a conversation later on. We started having conversations over the course of that maybe 2.5 weeks before his death, about his vulnerability as a man. How I thought he just was insensitive. I thought he just, even when he was sick, and he said, "Man, listen, I used to run these streets. I was hopping over." He was a super cop. I'd be jumping over buildings and in and out of buildings, and now I can barely walk. You don't know what that fall is like. I wonder now if my sons are going to be mean to me because y'all thought I was mean. And so he started sharing these vulnerabilities. And right before he died, we came to a sense of peace. I remember him saying before he died, please protect my wife, protect my family. I'm asking you, son. And so in many retrospects, I think that was an unfair ask, but I also understand it though now as well. And so I get it, because he came up in the context. The man that I did know as my grandfather, he was the same way. If you saw Granddaddy Sherman, he was either very fun or very executioner, right? It's funny about dads in that area. There was no gray ground. They wasn't going to invite you in to watch, TV. It was either we're going to do something really fun or I'm going to really make your day hard. And so my dad also he was selfish as hell, man. Like, he got to a point in life, and he would say it, at this point in my life, I'm doing what I want to do. So if I ain't picking up report cards, if I don't feel like cooking, like, he was very much, I don't know if that was your dad, Brian. It got to a point where autonomy became a thing, and really, I see it showing up in my life. And so that's kind of where I resonate with him. So when I hear Centrell say that, it brings me joy, because I've intentionally tried to father different than what Lamar did. And I don't hate Lamar. I'm not really angry at him, but I was intentional. Like, I want him to have happy memories. When Dad died, I remember sitting, he converted to Jehovah's Witness before he died. And I'm gonna go to the next question. I remember sitting in that Kingdom Hall, like, I don't have middle ground memories. It was either these incredible highs, Great America, fishing, we go to Popeyes or something, or him coming in and raining havoc. And it was in that moment I said, I got to make sure that they have other memories of me, and been intentional about that. So thank you for sharing. Brian, you indicated that you had a daughter.
Mhm.
One, is that your only child? And two, what is your relationship with your baby girl?
Well, yes, that's my only child, and she is my left and my right hand. So when I'm doing something with my left, she's coming with the right, So like this morning, we're taking production classes together, just because she has a whole interest in music, just in general. So she's pretty musically inclined. So I'm curious about how to work the board. So we took classes together. So those are the things that I try to create space so that we can do things that she likes to do, but then also, gives me an opportunity to teach her about broader lessons, about how to interact in certain situations. If I'm not in the studio, this is how you should behave, these kind of things, just so that she can understand how to actually move around within, the context of being an adult, because she's in 7th grade, but she's at Lindblom now. She's taking high school classes. So most of her contemporaries that she's dealing with are much older than her. So, just trying to balance that space, because I was a teenage boy, you know what I'm saying? And my daughter's cute, I know this. So I'm trying to, just keep that balance, and then not hover. And then at the same time, not make her feel like, daddy's a little bit too much. So I mean, it's that walking in balance and act that you do, and just trying to be honest. I don't pull no punches. I tell her everything, even if it sounds kind of harsh, I don't pull anything. It's like, you ask me, I'm going to tell you the unadulterated truth. And that's the only thing that I could do, not sugarcoat it, not try to make it seem sweet for her. No, it's like this, and that's the way it is, huh? So yeah.
Indeed. Do you have any children?
Really?
I have to ask the question. Do you have any children, Centrell?
Of course not. This is me we're talking about.
Good job. So it's weird, and this is where and it's funny. That's why he said really. I have 5 children by 4 women. I say it as a matter of fact, but not as a sense of pride. So if I'm honest with the people watching, and that's what we got to do, get to a space of healing, it depends on what child you ask what the relationship will be like. And that tied largely into where me and their mamas were. So my bookends, 1, 2, and 5, they would probably say dad is present, he's there, he's amazing. I would say that we have a great relationship. There's some gaps that I'll get into in a moment. 3 and 4, my daughter and my 12-year-old son, will probably be like, dude is trash, I don't mess with him. And so based off of the dynamics. And so that's kind of one of the things when I realized when I had this epiphany, I started pushing in my sons, like, I'm not a conservative preacher by any stretch of the imagination. I drink whiskey, I listen to Wu-Tang Clan, I preach James Cone. But if there's one conservative bone in my body, it's that, right? And we'll talk about that later. And so I would say that my relationship with my children has been extremely frayed. There's no way I could have parented 5 different babies in 4 households and been effective. So it's going to be some serious gaps. So if you ask Centrell, and Devin, they'll say, man, great dude. I'd agree with that. They are, like you said, my left and right hands. Centrell is our social media guy at the church. He came in and learned it. He does the tech. Even growing up, when he was a baby and I was walking through the Forest City with him in the stroller, trying to get attention from the young girls, he's always been there. Same thing with Devin. We've lived in different states where ever since they were 12, 10 or 11, me and their mom have kind of had it on like the Boys in the Hood, Furious Styles. You take them, it's your time. So we done traveled the globe. We done been together. We done had seasons. My youngest son, Emerson, in Nashville, he knows daddy. We talk, we communicate. That will be a healthy relationship. But sadly, 3 and 4, my daughter just graduated high school, and we hadn't spoken in a year prior to that because of the friction. And my 12-year-old, me and his mom, my nightly prayers, he's safe, sane, and safe. And so I think it really does depend on that. And so I applaud you, Brian, because I want that kind of relationship with all my children. And the fact that you have it.
But I only have one though. I only have one. So I can focus all my energy and attention into that one. If I had 4 or 5, I don't know how it would fare. And I'll be honest, because I'm busy as all get out. It's a lot of stuff going on. I don't know if I would be as present with all 5 as I am with her. Because she's there. She's the one person, right? So if I had to split up the time that I give her between 5 other people, I don't know how that would fare. So I'm just saying.
That's fair.
So don't be so hard on yourself.
No, it's fair. Because that's the next question. Like, are there drifts and gaps in your relationship that you would like to fill?
You mean with her?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the only drifts and gaps is that she's 13. So at 13, there's a certain amount of independence that she wants, and there's a certain amount of, protection that I want to give. So it's a back and forth with that, Dad, you hovering, why you standing over me? Like that's me wanting to be protective, but also being accessible, but at the same time, she feels like I'm hovering and I'm trying to kill her fun. And that's, so it's like that balance, but she's 13. So, trying to figure that out. And she's smart as all get out. So just trying to be like, you think you slick, like just those little things that you have to do as a parent in general, just, watching out and making sure and listening and being present. Those things are important because as long as you're present and you're listening and you're paying attention, you'll catch those context clues. But if you don't, then you won't catch no context clues because they don't necessarily tell you they're having problems or something's going on, or, so you have to kind of be intuitive enough to see, hey, your face ain't quite right. There's something going on, but that comes with having that relationship that you've built over the years. Because right now she's like, I'm good. And she'll go in a room and shut the door. But when she's ready to talk, she knows that she does have that door open and she can talk to me, but I might ask her 4 or 5 times, is there something wrong? Because your face is looking kind of funny. And she'll tell me no each time. But at some point, when it gets a little overbearing, then she might come talk to me. But she might talk to my wife first. Depends on the conversation about what it is,
That's fair. That's fair. What are some of the drifts and gaps in our relationship?
It's right now. It's a tricky question because the biggest drift is, at least to me, is it's the battle of me. Should I be still living with you right now, or Should I be out on my own, or do you still want me to live there and be all right until I'm ready, or do you want me to be out pretty quickly because I am 24 and doing all these things? It's sort of like where's the middle ground? It's still the struggle I still have with our relationship right now. In the past, uh, I would say that as a kid, not knowing much as I do now, it was the battle of like, how come my dad isn't always there, like every day? Like, yeah, I said you were there, and you've always been there, but it's like,
Not every day.
yeah, it is like even growing up around other kids my age who had dads that were always there, always found that kind of odd. And I personally don't remember this, but I've been told stories about how when I was at an age where I was able to talk, and you were still kind of out in and out of school, and that you wouldn't really be in contact like that, and that the first time you did, it was the person that confronted you about it was me at that young age.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that.
And so I don't have any memory of that,
Mm-hmm.
but I know that's also a friction at that young age that quickly was fixed.
Yeah.
But yeah, right now it's about like the transition of me still being with you versus me being on my own now. So
That's real. So thank you. I never knew that. That's learning something first time. So the drift you feel about you being with us, it's funny because I felt it and I see you walk on eggshells. So I want you, I don't have a problem with you living with me, right? I'll say it in publicly. Here's why. When I was your age, I had 2 children. As you said at the beginning, I was living with my folks. I was working bootleg jobs up until I got engaged the first time, and then all of that. And so I don't have a problem. You don't bring half of the shit, and I'm sorry, stuff that I brought to my parents, right? You don't. I literally aged my parents. Now, as a man, and Brian can attest to this, we want y'all to launch, right? So while it's cool that you here, and I'm sure he probably feels the same way about this baby girl, it's cool you here. At some point, I do want you to buy a house. I want to come to your house and have barbecue. I want you to have your family. I want you to get married or whatever it is, and have a family, however that looks. And so, but you don't have to hide from me. You know what I'm saying? I've never been, and that's the one thing I can say about my dad is as tough as he was, as rude as he was, he ain't never had a put out spirit. He'd be like, man, that's your problem. Hope you figure it out, man. Just don't get drunk and fall out on my floor. Like he had rules, but I literally stayed there till I figured it out. And so, but now there's a weakness to it because there were things that when I finally got out there, I was unprepared. So when I got engaged to Miss Nicole way back when, I didn't know how to pay bills. I didn't know how to operate in the space because I had been under my parents. So there's a part of me that wished that when you came, they would have been like, all right, you got to figure this out. So that's not it. Now the story you talking about was I started doing a lot of work in the community, found my niche in community activism. I had just gotten with a woman, me and your mom had split. And so I was trying to build that, and I took for granted that y'all will be okay. And then because, at the time, and every man, even dudes watching this, when we get mad at our baby mamas, the first thing we do is it take it out on the kids, right? So we were sitting in the currency exchange off of 87th and Kedzie, and it was something to the effect, and I got a phone call, and I was like, we'll go get ice cream later. And you was like, you always break your promises to me. And you got in the car with Nana and you wound up crying. Now, we didn't get the ice cream, but I can tell you that was the longest ride back with my mama. Like, when I tell you she read me for that goddamn filth, she did. And after that, I made it a point to say, hey, listen, and be present. And that's fair. As a little boy, you don't understand marriage constructs and things like that. To your point, I was always there, but I wasn't with your mama. And even when we were in a relationship, we couldn't shack. And so that's my biggest regret as a father. I got 5 children. I ain't potty trained none of them. I wasn't there for first steps. I wasn't there for these things. And so that, that does impact me. And so, yeah, thank you for sharing that. No, you don't have to walk on eggshells. I'm not putting you out, none of that. Now, I'm a proud black man. As you know, you see my library. I grew up talented 10, Dr. Du Bois, all that. I think at some point you got to grab what's in you and go out there and get it. So I do believe that, but I ain't pushing you because we do that as black families. We want to put the babies out at 17. We want you to get a job and bills in your name, and we ain't taught you nothing. Like, I was 21 when I had you. There was no lessons. Hell, you got more lessons from your grandparents than you did me at that time. So I can't then turn around and look at you and be like, you should be launched. Did I teach you how to launch? And that's what this season of life is. Did I teach you how to launch? No, man. So I could tell you and your brother, y'all 25, 24, 22, go out there and figure it out. But then when you do something crazy, you get hurt, you get harmed, you make a baby, guess who got to fix it? So yeah.
But see, that's the thing. You would actually fix it, right? So that's a testimony to you as a father. There's a lot of people that once you get to a certain age, you can turn 18, those problems that come along with your life are your problems. You figure it out. I got my own stuff I'm doing, you know? And I think that was more my reality to a lot, was that, you know, a lot of things I had to figure out on my own, because I just wasn't around my father that often, you know. So I didn't learn a lot of things from him directly. I learned because I knew that that's what a man was supposed to do. And then I went and figured it out. Like, I learned how to change oil. I learned how to paint houses. I learned how to mow lawns. I learned, you know, like all of these things I learned, but I learned because my mother wasn't going to give me money. So I still had to do things. I mean, she would get me necessities, but if I wanted some new shoes or something, and it's not, you know, that time of the year, I better get it myself, which meant that I had to figure out how to hustle, which meant that I had to learn how to do things, you know. And I think that because of that, to this day, I'm very resourceful, but I also don't know how to ask for help as a result of that, because I didn't know how to ask for help because I didn't know where to go get it. So in my, like, as an adult now, I look back at that and be like, man, I wish I would have known how to at least ask for help. Then I wouldn't be working so hard. I work 20 hours a day, you know. But as a result of that, you know, I'm now starting to become a better man with my daughter, because now I understand how to have those conversations with her and have her learn how to ask for help when she needs it, you know, because she's very independent and she picks that up from me and her mom. So, you know, I used to try to figure out ways to create ways for my daughter to fail. And I know that sounds crazy, but she was so good at everything that I felt like if she ever ran into any obstacles, she wouldn't be able to overcome them, because it's always been easy for her. Everything's been easy. So, you know, and trying to figure out that, you know, I think that it better prepared her, but at the same time, that's how I was raised to an extent. And, you know, I see her having issues when she needs help, she doesn't ask for it, you know? So those things are things that I've noticed and that I'm working on as a man, but that's something that was passed down to me, you know? So I said this last week when I was talking about some of our friends. We are really the sum total of our whole family's existence. Their trauma, they pass it down to their kids. That our grandparents are, you know, traumatized by their parents, you know, and then they traumatized our parents, and then they traumatized us. And all of us don't necessarily know that we were actually like operating in a traumatic space. This is our existence. This is what it is, right? Isn't that what it is for everybody else? You know,
Right.
it's not until we start really like being introspective and trying to understand, why am I doing this? Or why do I get nervous when I'm in these situations? You know, when you start really thinking about that and digging into it, you find out that it was passed to you, you know? You know, I talk about my mom. She's afraid of heights, right? And I'm like, now I get queasy when I'm around heights, you know, and I'm like, where does that come from? And come to find out, a great aunt many, many years ago was lynched, you know, so everybody in the family is like, stay away from heights, get away from this, but nobody knows why we're afraid of heights. It's that passed down trauma from that one incident that has plagued our entire family, and we don't even realize it. So these things are important. Like I'm happy that you all invited me to this conversation because, you know, I'm learning a lot too. Just how to, you know, interact with one another. You know, I can talk to my boys, my homies, my all my mentees, because I know how to like express myself when I'm dealing with men, right? But then when certain women come around, it creates a different energy for us, and now our energy of how we interact with ourselves and the women are different. So these things are things that I'm starting to like really hone in on and understand that we're doing, but trying to get to the root cause of it. And it's usually something that's been passed down from our fathers to us, you know?
Indeed. And it's funny you say that because there's a thing called epigenetics or something to that effect that talks about, it started when they started looking at Holocaust survivors, and then they started looking at African Americans, that trauma is passed down. Like if gifts and graces are passed down, your daddy could sing, you probably could sing, your daddy writes, you probably could write. It's also trauma, and that trauma is carried over. So to your point about heights, somebody started a traumatic event, created a family rule that's been passed down. I've been trying to figure out for years, you know, there are certain family rules that we had about strangers and things like that. And then I found out my mother was molested. And so she has a distrust of strangers, of community. She's very insulary, you know, would say it all the time, if it ain't blood, it don't matter. My dad, though, for whatever reason, is very community centered, right? And so then they realized that when he had to get away, and never really got the full story, he felt he had to leave. He went off. Then he became a cop, and that put him in odds with his people. He had different children. He was married, and then I don't care who watching and hear it. We clashed as siblings, man. I'm going through a life crisis now. I ain't gonna get into. When I tell you, ain't a nan Negro called me, but that's his experience, right? And so we passed these genetics on. And so I thank you for lifting that up, because it does make you pause. It should make you pause. And I think, though, for you and I, Brian, once we became aware of it, we started doing something different, you know, and being present. And so I think that's critical. Yeah, I think that's critical.
And I take that back to, you know, my conversation when I was kind of briefly talking about my grandfather. You know, those things, it took until he just passed maybe about 2 weeks ago, about a week ago, last week. And it took until he was 91 to start seeking out counseling, you know, and between that 91 to 94, it changed him. And it didn't change him for the worse. It changed him so that now he was able to discuss these things, because our parents, our grandparents, and our great-grandparents went through all types of trauma, from Jim Crow to lynchings to everything. They done seen all kind of stuff. And the one thing that as a parent you try to do is protect your kids from the pain that you had growing up. So with one thing that you'll do is, we're not going to talk about that. That was just too traumatic. I don't want to relive it, and I don't want to put that in your spirit, you know? But the truth is, that's a place that we can, you know, build from and learn from. And that's something that we as Black people, especially, we do not do. We hide all our pain, which means that now that we've hid it, it's coming out, even though we think that we've hid it, right? It's still oozing out. It oozes out like in alcoholism and all types of other things. You know, I might be mad at you about this one thing, and it might be little, but when I come bring you this one little thing, it's actually huge, because I got all this trauma on my back. And I'm speaking to you, I'm trying to correct you, but I'm correcting you based with all this trauma. So I'm bringing it to you too, and actually traumatizing you as well. So those things are things that we have to be mindful of. You know, I'm mindful of it, but I still make mistakes, you know? Like I'm mindful of it, but I still have what was instilled in me. So I have to check myself and take a breath before I react, because I know how my parents react, right? And naturally, I want to react like that because that's the way that it feels natural to me. But the truth is, that's not how we should be reacting, because we know better. because we've been to school. We've got all these books and stuff that they taught us different, you know? And so trying to apply that is a daily practice that we have to do every day, because we've got, like with me, I've got 45 years of programming, you know? So I'm trying to undo some of that programming to make me a better man and a better father and a better husband, right? But all of that is a process that we have to go through. And no matter where you actually wake up, you might mess around and wake up later in life after you've damaged your kids, you know? And now the rest of your life is trying to fix that damage, you know, because they turn into whatever the sum total of what you've done.
Exactly.
And so it's not no rule book. I mean, I know that there's a lot of books out here that say you do this and then you check this box, but then you walk up and be like, but my kid ain't nothing like that, you know? So it don't say it in page 17, how to deal with my kid, you know? So you just do the best you can and try not to, you know, do any damage in the process.
You know, it's funny, and then I'm gonna next question that you said that, because we find ourselves, especially if you're on social media, having these conversations about Black parenting, right? And at some point, I think I can count on one hand the times I physically punished my sons. And then one day it hit me. I don't want to do this. Like, people were like, you need to whoop his ass. I just don't want to do that. It didn't feel right. And even the shaming, the embarrassment, stuff that we were programmed to do. I like that 45 years of programming. Like, why are we still doing that? You know, when studies show that it don't work, why are we still doing it? Why are we invested in this culture of toxic masculinity? You know, I never subscribed to the boys will be boys kind of attitude. So I know we grew up, girls couldn't do nothing, boys could reign free. But then I look at my life and what did it result in? Shit ton of kids. So I don't want that for them. So we started talking about sex. And what's the one thing I tell you don't have?
Kids.
Kids. Specifically, don't get you no baby mama, get you a wife. Don't get you, and people think that that's weird. Like, why are you talking to him like that? Why are you scaring the boy away from girls? I ain't scaring them away from girls, man. I ain't never did that with my sons, any of my children. I'm trying to teach them an ethical, healthy manhood that's not, no, boys will get you in trouble. And in this day and age, boys will be boys to get you a charge. In this day and age, you know, this is really a matter of life and death. I recently came across a study that somebody near and dear to my heart told me I worship at the altar of logic and reason. I don't know how to tap into my feelings. And I've been sitting with that for like 3 months. And then I found a study that said children that are whipped or given physical punishments growing up don't know how to tap into their feelings, because you have to think logically to avoid a whooping. You don't get the privilege of an impulse decision or an emotional decision and work through it. So I literally, and I tell them all the time, the worst whoopings I got was when I made emotional decisions. So when my dad asked me, hey man, why you do this? And I'm mad, I got whooped harder. So it trained me to put logic and reason first. But then what did that do to my interpersonal relationships? So I got people crying, pointing out their heart, and I'm like, Mr. Spock on Star Trek, like that makes no sense
That's
whatsoever.
pretty messed up. All right, well, next. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like, and so then I'm known as uncaring or unflinching, when deep down inside I care. I just ain't never tapped into that. So, you know, thank you for that. Thank you.
You know,
Brian, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, to piggyback off of what you said, some of that is not just parenting either. It's just the way that as men we have to be. Like, we can't show certain emotion, you know, as black men. Let me preface that again. As black men, because there's certain situations that we find ourselves in that we have to learn how to control our emotions, because if you're emotional in that moment, you're dead. You know, right. And that's the reality of it. And that doesn't mean that it comes from white folks or anything. It's just being a man. You could be out on these streets and you just too emotional and somebody will kill you, you know, or you dealing with the police and you too emotional and they're going to kill you. Like, those things are the reality of how it is to exist as a black man. And so a lot of times we've learned through those experiences that it's best to just keep our feelings close to breast, right? And not show any emotion, because if we do, that might be detrimental to us. It might have some fatal, you know, repercussions behind it. So we've learned how to mask those things and hold them in and not show no emotion. But then that also goes to how we raise our kids. Now we're raising our kids with that no emotion and all of those things, and not giving them what they need to grow or to know that they're loved by their father. We assume that mom is supposed to be the nurturer all the time, and to an extent that's a natural thing. But our kids need our nurturing too. They need us to pick them up and say, hey, you fell off your bike. Let me wipe you off. You okay? But I'll be honest. I'll be like, you fell off your bike? Boy, get your ass up. You brush it off. You know what I'm saying? That's how I was raised. So I couldn't even cry when I fell off the bike, because then I get in trouble for crying, for falling off the bike.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So those are the things that we actually physically think about. And we're like, well, you know what? I can't cry, because if I cry, I'm gonna get beat. So now that's instilled into us to later on. Now I have no emotion. So when you sitting here crying in front of me, I'm looking at you like you crazy. Like, why are you crying? It ain't that serious. I gotta lose an arm before I cry. And even then, I'm not gonna even cry. I'm gonna sit there and hold it in and suck it up. But it's my, so those are the things that I think that this trauma goes like really deep. And it's not just, just between parents and kids. It's just relationships in general with our whole entire family and how that dynamic plays out. I have cousins that I don't talk to, and I have cousins I talk to every day. And the reason why is because the way we were brought up were similar. So I talk to those cousins all the time, but the ones that didn't quite come like me, I'll see you when I see you at the family reunion. And those things are in those conversations and learning about each other's trauma and past. We get an opportunity to grow, as not just as families, but as men and as people. So we have to be able to listen to other people's trauma stories and then empathize with them and then learn how to grow from them.
Indeed. So if I were to talk to your baby girl, what's your baby girl's name? I'm sorry, if you don't mind sharing.
Amina.
If I would talk to Amina, what is the one thing you think she would worry about you? If I said, Amina, what's the one thing worries you about your dad? Like, you go to bed every night praying to God, protect my dad from or help my dad with. What would she say the one thing is?
Good question. That's a really good question. You almost made me want to be like, Mina, come up here. And answer that one. But
put her on this camera without warning.
Like I would actually guess at the fact that she feels like I don't take care of myself. Like I'm task driven. So if I got a deadline or something that has to get done, and I'm a serial entrepreneur, so I always got a lot of stuff that's on deadline. So I might not eat all day because I'm focused on what I'm focused on. And in the meantime, I haven't eaten, or I did a camping event 2 years ago. And this is probably why I say that. I did a camping event 2 years ago. It was a hip hop camp out, and I had 15 families. We had camping grounds. We was all out there, but it was 101 degrees that day. And half of the people that were supposed to assist me, they didn't help and they didn't show up. So my butt was out there moving stuff, setting up tents, setting up tables, setting up everything. I was out all day. And then by the end, I'm also a professional DJ. So then I ended up DJing because the DJ that was supposed to show up didn't show up, and the person that was supposed to run the sound didn't. So all these things happened. So it ended up being me because it's my thing. So I was out there hauling stuff, and then I just passed out. I just passed out. They took me to the hospital. She was there for all that, And so she always think like, hey, did you drink your water? Did you do this? Did you do that? And, I'm like, girl, go on. But I know where that worry comes from. So I just receive it. And then yeah, baby, let me get my water. Okay. Not because I really needed it. I just need to ease her mind that I'm going to be okay. But so to answer your question, I would think that would be it, that I don't do enough self-care. I saw somebody put that across the screen. Yes, that's the biggest thing. I don't do enough self-care. I think about everybody else first.
I'm almost scared to ask you this question. But you heard the question. What is the one thing? You got this serious face, so I'm almost scared. What is the one thing that worries you about your father? your old man.
Can I borrow that?
What, this?
Mhm. I'm terrified that this is going to be the death of him. His phone. Now, let me go into detail. My pops is a working man. Like he's out, he runs a church. He does all these plans, all these events every single week, and that's not even including the other stuff that are like special events. And sometimes it can stress him out. Like he may not think that I see it, but I can see it stress him out sometimes. Like sometimes he just looks tired. Like he's ready to pass out on the chair that he sits in his office, or just pass out on the couch. Sometimes he does. I think that we all thought it was old age. For me, I think he's like he hasn't had a chance to like get a really, really good night of sleep. And one day, I'm just worried that the emotion and all the energy he puts into everything and all the craziness that it involves is gonna like overwhelm him and just shut his body down to the point where he goes to sleep and won't wake back up anymore because he would have just been so burnt out, so just distraught over everything, whether it's like his work, social interactions, even his personal life. Even with my parts of my siblings, I know that still weighs down on him. So all of that is like one big old perfect storm that's just like one day could strike down on him and nobody will be ready for it. Not even me.
Yeah, somebody told me that he struggles whenever my phone goes off, but he just clarified it. And I do remember one night, it's I guess it's not funny anymore. It was funny at the time, but hearing him articulate it, I guess I dozed off at my desk. I was working, and all he heard was a fall, and that was my tablet falling. And he came running in there, and I heard the panic in his voice. And so I was like, I just had an old man sleep, and he was like, "Nah, man, and like he was angry. He's like, you have to go to bed. You have to get up now." And when my children start barking orders, but I now understand it because and even the next day he didn't think it was funny. He's like, "I don't think it's funny, man. I thought you died at your desk." And like that's my fear. And I was like, you joke, smoke, like who dies at their desk, man? And he was like, a lot of people die at their desk. And so Harold Washington, that's right. And so he checks on me more than anybody else. And for a while, I thought it was because he was craving attention and wanted to, now I understand, like, I need to make sure you're there. And so, as he indicated, it's a lot going on personal-wise that I am going to take a 2-week sabbatical where I probably will turn my phone on once a day for a couple of hours and turn it back off because I need to recharge, it's critical. But I think what I often explain to my sons is I grind hard now because I didn't do it right. I didn't do it in my younger years. I partied, kicked, made babies in my younger years. So here I am, 46 this August. I need a retirement plan in the next 10 years. That means that I gotta grind a little harder. Here it is. I have never owned a house, right? And so I'm trying to get these things so I can pass it on to them. I hear their struggle, not at the expense of your life, but I also believe that line from Black Panther, with T'Chaka said that T'Challa, a man that ain't prepared his children is not a man. Is not left something. It's not a man. And so I'm in a rock and a hard place. Like I would love to not do nothing one day. And some days I manage to sneak it out. I just drink whiskey, eat some chicken wings and chill. But the other side of it is when the rest of y'all was grinding in y'all 20s, I was on BS. And so now, what you don't do on the front end, you got to pay for on the back end. And maybe some young brother needs to hear that. In my faith tradition as a pastor, the Bible says, give it to the Lord in your youth. And so it's a tension, but I don't want to discount their fears, but I also don't want to be at the end of the life. They're like, how much did daddy got in the bank? $1,750. I don't want to be like, how we going to bury this dude? Oh, yeah, we get on GoFundMe. So just trying to figure out, the ways in which.
Well, you just actually hit on a real good point. Black families start over every generation because we've never been taught financial literacy as a whole. So when we start thinking about that grind that you're talking about, that's something that we all going to continue to do, because we're starting from a point of beginning from zero each time. Every generation we start from zero, because we don't have any real wealth as a people to pass, right? Or I need to use every penny I got to make it, right? So there's nothing to pass. But I went to Homewood Flossmoor High School, which is a kind of, upwardly, I say upper middle class, and it was majority white when I went. Now it's majority black. But when I went, it was majority white. My counterparts that I graduated with, they graduated with cars. They graduated with houses when they got married. They got $500,000 when they had their firstborn. Those are the things that we don't actually have. And so because we don't have that ability to pass that, we have to work harder just so that we can have enough to pass down to CJ, And that's something that our generation has to figure out, because our parents' generation was the generation that broke into corporate America, right? But our generation has to figure out that whole piece on how can we pass wealth so that our children don't have to work as hard as we had to work, to make sure that they have a leg up and they have some things that they can build off of for our grandkids, And so that, because I know I don't have anything coming from my parents, I got to work hard extra too, so that I can make sure Amina has something, So I think that you've been a little hard on yourself, Tom, because the truth is we all got to work hard just to get to zero, and that's something that's unfortunate, as an existence as Black folks in the country on a broad scale. That's something that it is what it is,
I confess, I never thought of it like that, that every generation is starting from zero. Because in terms of work, I'm definitely not working as hard as my father did. So I thought it was some progress, right? I ain't a cop. He was definitely a blue collar factory guy. Couldn't tell you anything about that, but I do work hard. The caring for people, showing up as activists is hard. But I never thought of it from the lens of, they didn't pass nothing, so that meant I had to start from zero. And then I think now that I'm aware of it, I'm trying to, and again, I made mistakes when I was younger, so I got to pay a child support. When he finally goes to China, I want to be able to go with him. I don't want to be like, man, you got to go without your dad. State Department got it because baby run problems. I don't want to be 50 saying BS like that, So trying to pay it down. But I hear my son in this moment, that, hey, I worry about you. I worry that, you grind and you give. And I'm gonna take that to heart. And I appreciate him sharing that. Because I don't want them to come wake up. I heard his fear. I don't want to come see you one morning and you don't get up. That's a scar. That's a wound, right? Now that gave this boy trauma. So I don't want that either. So pushing forward from that. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Anytime.
Black person hug? No? Okay. So
right now, we still got more to cover.
If you were sitting in a group of young people, Brian, what would you tell a group of young men who are at the dating age, who probably considering starting families or maybe even have a kid? What would be the three things? Let's do three that you would tell them about fatherhood.
One, you're never ready, right? You're never ready.
Never.
You believe that you're ready, or you can set up all these things to believe that you're ready, but you're never ready. It's a job that you're going to have to learn on the job, because each child is different, and there's no blueprint. They say they walk at 8 months. They say they do it. It doesn't necessarily work like that. The second thing is be honest with yourself and with your partner and mate as to what you can do and what you can't do prior to you even considering going down that road. Because unplanned parenthood is something that we deal with, right? It's just a reality. But Planned Parenthood, and not talk about the place, because that's a whole other thing, but Planned Parenthood itself is something that could be great, especially if you know that that's what you're building for. You said 3 things. And I guess the third thing would be keep your eyes open and your head on the swivel. You know, make sure that you're giving your child, when your child comes, your undivided attention, especially in the early years, because you don't know how much you set them up for the future when you're present. So be present. So that, I mean, those are the things that I think are really very important. Presence is very, very important, even more than money. Presence is very important. So be present.
Agreed. I think that if I was sitting before young men, I would definitely start off with, there is no formula for this. Anybody that tells you it is lying. It's you're never prepared to be a father. Even when you have multiple children, it's always like, you know, I would even argue, look at family history. Are you, to what we talked about, are you about to make a child with somebody with a crap ton of vicarious trauma, epigenetic trauma, current trauma, and have they done the work of healing? Therapists, psychotherapy, spiritual care, because your baby's gonna carry that. I have seen people in my life who are mean as hell and have a mean as hell baby. And you be trying to figure out why this 8-month-old is a mean old, just every time somebody, hey, you know, like, why is your baby mean? Like, wow. The mean-year-old 3, just angry, just always scowling, just sitting in the corner like this. And ain't nothing wrong, right? Well, daddy got unresolved anger issues, mama got unresolved anger issues, and you just brought in this baby with unresolved anger issue. So I would say, man, I hate to use this analogy, but rats look at genetics. And so, you know, if you study animals, rats are the prime example that come to mind. They reject mates. They sniff them like, nah, I ain't gonna mate with you. You like chewing on electrical wires. I don't want babies to chew on electrical wires. And so I think the humans need to have that point. She looks good. He looks great. They got a great finance, but does this Negro drink a fifth of whiskey at every drop of stress? Does she throw tables and chairs when she mad? Mm-hmm. Now, mix whatever that is with who you are, what kind of child and environment will you be? And lastly, though you cannot be financially ready, emotionally and mentally ready, I'm a firm believer, and this is the one conservative strain, do not have children out of the context of the system of marriage. Let me say that again. I would tell them this whole modern, you ain't need no ring, and you no. Because people change. Everything cool with you and your co-parent the first 5 years, she decides she want to become a Buddhist, and in the next 10 y'all fighting, and their baby's gonna feel it. So you need to make sure, because though that could happen in the construct of marriage, to your point, she can't get up and move to a monastery without you. You can't get up and decide you're just gonna go to LA because you want to be a rapper at 39, you know, your lifelong dream. You have something in your place to figure it out. And so I would definitely say, I would tell young people, man, listen, can we put an end to the baby mamas and baby daddies in the community? Because as I indicated earlier, and you gave me grace, you can't parent. Like, I used to think I was a good dad to all 5 of my children. The fact of the matter is, I've been a great dad to 2, I'm a good dad to 1, and the other 2 are like, and I'm like, because the fact of the matter is, that was 4 personalities, 4 different homes, 4 different constructs that I've had to try to navigate through. So I definitely would tell them, like, nah. And the asterisk I would put is financially ready. Bruh, you should not be trying to make no baby working at McDonald's as the fry guy. You should not be trying to make no baby and you still living in your mama basement and trying to sell mixtapes. Because diapers cost, daycare costs, kids get sick, the kids do things crazy, like fall off their bike trying to jump over a car, and you got to be able to take care of that. You got to be able to take off and go to PTAs and things like that to be engaged. So I would definitely add as an asterisk, hey, don't short term the money game, because this stuff and they only get more expensive. This dude no longer drinks formula. He wants some of my lamb. So now I got to buy extra lamb because he wants some, like, he wants some bison burgers now. That burger looks delicious. So now I got to buy enough because I know he gonna want to try it. And so, you know, what kind of gopher fish is that? I've read about this, and so they don't get cheaper; they actually get expensive. And so that's what I would say. What would you like for me to say to you? What would be some of the things you would want us to say
About about
being a father?
As you know, I'm not a father, thank goodness. So I gotta think on this from a mind of somebody who's still a son, who's always going to be a son. Um, as it was mentioned before, presence is always important, like always, even from like the earliest of age all the way to like even when they're like 45. If you're still alive and kicking, you should always be there for your child, especially on like the most important days when it's time to celebrate. It's time they accomplish something amazing. You should always be there. And even in the lowest parts of their lives, when they're struggling, when there's issues, what makes the great father is that they always find a way to be there. If not physically be there, we live in an age where digital is everywhere. So you could at least call them and just video chat with them. Just show that, hey, I'm here. I'm talking to you. I'm making time out of my day every day as much as I can. No matter where I am in the world, for whatever reason, I still make a chance to be there. The second part is the setting, because the saying is that it takes a village to raise a child, and so from an early age, from my experience, I didn't live with him. I lived with my mom and her parents, and so I wasn't truly accustomed to where the area he lived and his parents lived. It wasn't until I was like 12 or 13 where I had a good foundation on like how I thought everything was until it wasn't. And so as a parent, you always got to be mindful of like this scenario, the situation that you as a father are currently in. Because if you have a kid that's around like all kinds of craziness, they'll absorb that as like, okay, with their limited mind of like how the world is, they will think like the neighborhood and the other neighborhoods close to it, they will think that's how the world is. And so that would be my second point. A father should know the surrounding that they're in. And the last part, is honesty. Like sometimes as fathers, we would want to project, being strong, being like nothing phases me. Even in the Bible's always said it like about how strong men never let anything phase them. And in this day and age, it's like we've taken that to an extreme level, like to the point where only the mother's supposed to show vulnerability and the father's supposed to be headstrong and not show that nothing ever phases him. Whereas, sometimes we got to tell the kids, the father should tell the kids, like, look, I'm tired. I am going through a lot, but I'm not going to let it phase me. But just know that things are currently happening that is affecting your dad, and it's nothing wrong, nothing you guys are doing. In fact, I would think that the kids' presence is making their lives even better. And so, just being honest with the child, like just saying like, hey, this is what it is, but I'm not gonna let it affect our relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate that. I do. And it's funny because you mentioned context, and I did forget that. I grew up in Southside Chicago, Foster Park, 81st. He grew up in Justice, Illinois.
a suburb that's like way out west.
Yeah, about 40 minutes from Chicago proper.
Mhm.
40 minutes from Western. When his grandparents died, who they were living with, they wound up having to move to 79th and St. Lawrence. And now that I think about it, that first 2 years was an adjustment for this dude. Like his brother, Devin, middle boy always had a little bit of Negro in him, so he was fine. He was fascinated by the sights and sounds. Is that a crack addict? Like he was fascinated. I think it put my son in a low-grade depression because he was like, man, I can't go outside and play. I can't speak to neighbors. He'd speak to people. Hey, y'all, shut up, nerd. Like it was a whole social construct because he came from a place where kids played outside and in the block, and then they shared toys, and you went across the hall to don't even look at your neighbor because they're gonna cut you out of being in their business. And so I think that we didn't consider that. I mean, granted, we moved where we were able to find, but I think that we didn't consider, his wellness.
And it was rough because it wasn't like I knew if anyone had a choice, they wouldn't allow it. But because my mom's parents died, he still grieved from his father, and like a year into living it, his mother passed away. And I've always mentioned, like, if anyone asks me, it was not only just the emotional aspect, it was also the fact that, they were super young, like early 20s still. And they didn't work the jobs that allowed them to, like, live in a good environment. And so they had to find a place to live, wherever that would be. And so I would think that they were just trying to make the best out of something, even though it was still kind of like the area was still rough and I had no idea how to deal with it. It wasn't like there was time to prepare. It was like, boom, I just, while we were still grieving, it was like, boom, it suddenly happened within like less than 3 months.
Yeah. So grief is a thing, and it impacted us and it impacted the way we move. But villages became important too. Making sure we surrounded ourselves. So I can say in that regard, I put together one hell of a village because again, I didn't have family. To your point, Brian, about cousins, we connect, we don't. I got maybe 4 cousins I connect with. And still, I couldn't tell you why, but the external, the new village, people picking them up from school, people loaning money, people buying, helping out. Like, I think that's why I love my village and protective of my village, because I know in those dark moments, I wouldn't have made it. But the Healing Association put something in the box that caught my eye, and I'm going to shift our conversation for the last 45 minutes. To be a good father, you have to be a good man. And that's also part of our task today, to talk about manhood in the community. And I confess, for me, it's a complicated thing because I sit at some interesting intersections. So, Brian, what is the state of Black manhood right now? If you had to be honest, if you stood before whatever God or deity, and he or she said, what is the state of brothers in your community, my child, what would you say?
I'd say disconnected and kind of misdirected. It's kind of a sad point for me, because I sit in a lot of real interesting circles, and I get to see the community from all different angles. And the one thing that I see a lot of times, more than most, is ego, and a lot of our guys are operating from that space. And it's like you're operating from that space of ego, but at the same time, you have no knowledge base. So it makes it really difficult to build from that because you can't have a general conversation because everybody's egos show up first. And that's the sad thing, because within all our problems and within all our experiences is the actual answer. And if we can't see each other and meet each other eye to eye, and like the one thing that I try to make it real simple, and I say things like, if I can look at you in the eye and I can see my reflection of myself and I like what I see, then we've won, right? But what would it take to do that? Because most guys that I see in the community, not all, because it's, I'm part of some great organizations with some great people, but what I see is that a lot of us can't have a conversation with one another And because we can't have that conversation, we can't see that thing that's behind the door that the person that's to my left see, but he can't tell me about it because we can't have an honest discussion to move forward with what's best practices. I've been in large groups that have large organizational arms that bicker with one another based upon what's most important for the community. I would rather make a community garden. I would rather do patrol. I would rather talk about education. I would rather talk about these things. But in reality, all of those things are the problem, right? And it's not one thing is greater than the other, it's all of it. But what happens is that people get in their ego so much that they can't see that we have to link arms and walk together to get past this problem. So what happens is we go hard because we got these smart folks in the room. We so smart, we go hard and we don't talk to the least of them to find out what exactly they need. You know, what do we need in Chatham versus what do we need in Roseland versus what do we need in Austin? Those are all different conversations, right? But the person from Roseland got the answer for Austin, and that's not necessarily the answer. So when we start talking about how do we as Black men come together, we have to first love one another and see each other and see ourselves in one another so that we can go and fight this bigger battle. But if we can't do that, we'll never get to the other battle that has to happen. So there has to be a tremendous amount of healing for Black men before we can actually address the issues that we're dealing with. But that's not happening. So we got a lot of people that's running at these problems. And unfortunately, I don't see them actually changing. The problems that we're fighting are the same problems that our great-grandparents fought, you know, and we don't see that it's changed. The technology has gotten faster, but we're still dealing with the same issues.
Right.
We're still dealing with all of the same issues that our great-grandparents dealt with. It just masked a little bit. A couple of us might make it through the door, but a couple of us made it back through the door back in the day too. So it's one of those things that if we don't actually get in front of one another and actually discussing what we can actually do, like real actionable steps and not pie in the sky shit, if we can actually do that, then we can make a change. If I can make my neighbor, when I go outside, speak to me and smile and say, hi, Brian, kind of like what you were saying, that happens in Justice. If we can make that happen in Inglewood, then we will see the changes in Inglewood happen. But if I don't even know you and I don't even talk to you, and then I don't even like myself because of all the issues that's going on, then ain't no way in hell I'm gonna build with you because I don't even like myself and you look like me. So I got a problem with you. And that's a real thing. So we have to learn how to love one another and learn how to love ourselves before I can love you. And then once I love you, then I can love the greater community. But I can't do any of that if I can't love myself, right? Or if I feel like I'm less than, or I don't have the tools that's necessary to be successful. All of those things make me feel less than, which means that now I got a problem with you because you less than too.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think you hit on some points because I agree and affirm with everything you said. I think it is this ego. I think I'm a Black nationalist, so I put white supremacy as a thing, and it's done a number on us. I think we have gotten in trouble because we've modeled white maleness because of our lack of power, and so we bring that over into our community. I know it's a lot of conversations around toxic masculinity, which I think is a thing. Some of it is kind of we got to talk about, but I think that 90% of the argument stands. This everything we talked about, not knowing how to express emotions, not knowing how to love yourself, not owning when you're hurt. I think that that's a huge thing, a huge thing. You know, I'm always amused when we have these debates on social media, should men cry in public? And there are people that's literally visceral, like any man that cries in public should be put to death. And it's like, but why? I think that lack of being able to touch your humanity, your divinity, your spirit, If you can't tap into that because you're trying to protect this thing called masculinity, then there's no way you're going to adhere to and acknowledge the divinity in others. Not in full, in totality. You might play a lip service, there might be moments of it, but there's no way you're going to tap into that. I think that we have to reconcile the fact that we've been struggling for some time as Black men. Now, again, I'm not anti-Black. I'm not going to say we're pathological, but there have been some legitimate struggles, and I think that we need to have honest conversations about where we've fallen short. That's part of the reason I'm transparent about my parenting choices and behavior, you know, because that was part of that toxic masculinity. That did come out of the fact that I didn't love myself and that I always struggled for affirmations. And so, but I don't think it's not winnable. I think the challenge is for us as Gen Xers, for boomers, the millennials and Gen Zers are actually working on this stuff. That's why they you know, in our day, there would have never been an openly gay rapper. Never. But they're exploring. In our days, we would have struggled with women leading the civil rights movement, but then we got Black Lives Matter. So I think that there's some lessons that we probably, is to your point, as older men, need to put our egos to the side and ask the young brothers, what is it that you want to teach us? You know, what is it that you can impart in our lives? How is it that you're able to show up free and authentic in the world and help us do that? But beyond everything else, like you said, I think that that's really big. I don't love myself. I don't see myself as a human. So it kind of reminds me of that Juice scene when Tupac was at the locker. I don't care about myself. So I know, I don't care about you. And that's real. And that's really real. What do you say about Black men in this current age?
Pretty much what you all said. There are some like unresolved issues, but to piggyback on it, on what was talked about much earlier, it's all genetics. Like, if I remember, I can't remember when I saw it, but I remember when I was in school, I believe high school, I think, I saw an image about like the history of African Americans in the United States of America. And from the time that it was founded, that we were brought over as slaves, all the way up to, I guess, the Civil War, that was like, what, about 100 years?
16, 19, 18, but close to 200. Yeah.
200 years of just Black men being slaves. And then from the point where slavery ended up to the Civil Rights Movement, we still didn't have any, African Americans still didn't have any rights in America. You know, like the signs for whites, for colors. That's not what that just wasn't in the South, but it was like heavily promoted in the South. But even in the North, it was there was social rules about it. You know, it wasn't like obvious signs, but the people still enforced it. And so from that all the way to the 1960s, during the whole Civil Rights Movement, that still was going on. And from 1960 all the way to 2021, it's only been what, 61 years?
Close. Yeah.
And so that's like what? That's a grandfather, father, son, great grandfather even. That's only like at most 4 generations of that. And those effects, those traumas from them are still being passed down, still being recent. And that's why you got all these like emotional issues, like craziness going on, and the struggles within us as like current African Americans, even young men, because it's like all this stuff has happened. There was all these changes across history, but yet there's still this like fight. There's still this anger within us that our parents passed down to us, that the grandparents passed down, because it was so widespread across the country. And so we haven't gotten to the point where we haven't addressed it and been able to deal with it. It's not just even in African Americans, it's even in the like Caucasians, the white people. That's why you see like all these police officers, all these people in power that still looks down on African Americans that do all these crazy things that I know was taught to be wrong, but it was still done because of that emotional fear, those images that was projected in themselves from the parents, the great grandparents, that was passed down genetically. And so we need to look at ourselves as like, okay, we still clearly feel the hurt that our great grandparents, our grandparents even, still felt like mad. Even that ones that was passed down from the great grandparents to the people that were still like living in slavery. That could be recent.
Mhm.
That could be recent in their generation.
Indeed.
And so we look at ourselves and look at our past history about like, okay, there's still a fight that needs to be handled. It's not necessarily about changing the laws or just doing all things to us, but it's really a mental and emotional battle within ourselves that we still feel, even in our families, even in the environment, they still haven't caught up with all the changes emotionally and physically. And so we really got to look at that as like young black men, African Americans, look at those points as well for the cause of like really changing how things are.
So you would say that's what your generation needs to do, and the ones after you need to
Mhm.
look at all of this, because that was a question that was asked by the
Yeah.
Healing Academy. What would you do to change it in young men? And you would look at all that you said, the fact that
We need
society,
to remember that yes, 60 years is a long time, but it took over 100 years for slavery to even end, and there was still a battle to be fought after that. That took just as long, even longer.
okay,
I think we after the civil rights movement, we felt like the war ended, the battle ended, but we prematurely thought it was over.
wow. Now I'm gonna say why I say wow for two reasons, Brian. One, I agree with everything he said. But two,
Yeah.
I thought my son was race neutral. Now I didn't judge him. I was not mad, but he's not pro black Malcolm X on his wall like I am. He don't eat black cornflakes, shop at black banks. Like he'll tell you I'm crazy with it. Like I only want blacks. Like, but he just articulated so really wow. I guess he been paying attention.
Here's the thing with me, because I was raised in like I wasn't raised in South Side of Chicago like throughout my entire childhood. I only moved there when I was about like just about to finish up with middle school, like 12, 11, 12, 13. I was able to like see how different races can mingle when there's no like anger, sadness passed down. It's just pure emotion, just who they are. And there was a lot of like kindness, happiness. We didn't see each other. It's like a different race. We felt like we were connected. We were all friends. We were all happy. We were all like mingling with each other. I never had to feel like I had to sit by myself because of the color of my skin. So I think from that point on, I knew there was kind of like a battle of like, okay, we have to separate ourselves because deep down we still don't trust them, but we haven't figured out why. And so that's a thing that hasn't been touched on because there was always like there's like an untapped segregation, even in Chicago still. You know, south side of Chicago, can you count on one hand how many white people you've seen just like living around here?
That wasn't on drugs. That wasn't like
Yeah.
Not many.
uh,
That's
white
intentional.
people that lived on the south side of Chicago was either the feds or they were drug addicts.
And
So
so
I don't know.
and so there's like this still untapped segregation that is still being felt, but just because it wasn't as crazy as it was during slavery, the civil rights movement, doesn't mean it doesn't have the same impact.
Hey, CJ, I want to follow up on something you said, and I'm not saying this to discredit anything you just said because your experience was somewhat my experience. I went to 13 schools growing up, so I've seen it all, right? And I've been in a school where it was one white kid, and I was in a school where I was the only black kid. You know, so I've seen it all. In that, I've had friends of that was the color of Benetton, which is every kind of walk of life, right? But then once we start getting into about our 30s, and people started, realizing where they wanted to go in life, when they started realizing where they wanted to go in life, they started becoming racist by default, by upholding the systems that are in place. So they start upholding them because they benefit them, right? But as long as we don't have anything and we all on the same, page, everyone is happy, right? And everybody is holding hands and we kumbaya and everybody's great. But when you start really, really looking at it and they say, you know what? It benefits me to make sure that CJ don't show up. Then they do stuff and they create policy to make sure CJ don't show up. And that's the thing that when I say that we start over every generation, it's almost like they get to an age when they start realizing race first, or whatever it is that they believe is first, right? And then they start creating their reality from that. And if they're in a position of power, they start creating these systems to make sure that you don't have the ability to raise up your child so that you can take resources from their child, because they believe that the world doesn't have an infinite amount of possibilities. They believe in a finite amount of possibilities, which means that if you take something off this table, that means you're taking something from them. It's not that the table has an infinite amount of food on it, which is the reality of it, right? But they don't believe that. They believe that it's gonna run out, and when it runs out, I gotta make sure that I got all mine for my kids and my and people that's coming after me. So that means that you can't get it, CJ. And they change.
It's almost as if even though all these battles happen, the position of power doesn't want to let things go, even after so many centuries. They still want to.
And I'll even take it a step further. And this is about to be a real lesson for everybody on this call. What they do is they operate in a space where they want to control, right? Mm-hmm. So when they create that, they say, you know what, whatever the cause is, there's a great cause. They get behind that cause, but then they start directing how that cause is working through their funding. So what they do is they tell you, I'm going to give you this money, but you can't say these words no more. I can't see no red, black, and green stuff on this stage no more because, you know, I just gave you $100,000. That's what's going on. So right now, I saw something about the violence. I couldn't read it that fast, but the violence that you see in the streets right now is a planned thing, right? When you have a lot of money and you start talking about, I'm gonna put this money out here, but I'm gonna give it to this group that don't have any history in this, doing this work, that's a ploy to make sure they're washing money. So it's like, CJ, you got a problem where something's going on with your dad. I want your dad to make sure that he's okay, right? That seems genuine, right? But if I give you $100 million and tell you to go to make sure your dad goes over to university or such and such to get help, and make sure that this doctor is the one that works on him, and make sure that he uses this medication, and then make sure that this happens when you come out of there, and he has to have this particular kind of wheelchair, right? But I just gave you $100 million. So now you have to go get these things. But when you go get these things, did I really give you $100 million? Or did I give all them other people that got the check that you spent the $100 million? That's what's going on when you start talking about the problems in our community. People come into saying that they're gonna help us, and they come in with that money, but really they just using it to enrich themselves because they tell us what we can do with the money and who we can hire and who should work for us. Like it's a ploy and it's a game. And so I'm speaking this on this call because we're talking about Black men and standing in what we have to do. We have to understand if that's what it is, because I got friends that's like, I want to do this festival, right? And this festival is going to benefit all Black people. And so they start going to all Black people, and Black people are like, you know what? I ain't got 2 nickels to rub together to give you nothing. But the truth is they do have 2 nickels, but they don't want to give it to that, right? So in the meantime, while I'm working on something that's going to benefit all Black people, I can't get no money from no Black people to do it. So we got to go over here and get funding. But as soon as we go get that funding, then we've gotten cuffed. They tell us what we can do, where we can do it, and then they tell us that we got to hire their cousins. That's the reality of what we're dealing with. So as Black men, we have to know that and figure out, you know what? I know your stage ain't gonna be the Lollapalooza type stage, right? But your stage can be the smaller stage, but we're all eating off of that, right? And so then now you can put your kid in school off of that stage money. Mm-hmm. That's the things that we have to know what we're dealing with. But many times we happy to get the funding because we need it, right? And not understanding that we're selling this piece of us away every time we do that, because they're trying to control the neighborhoods that we're in for various different reasons. And so they use that money to do it. But they start off with the we all kumbaya and we all love each other. And then they'll tell you, I don't see color. Well, if you don't see color, then you don't see me because I'm Black.
Right.
And that's a real thing. But they'll tell you that we shouldn't see color. We shouldn't feel this kind of way. We're all together. And right? And we believe that because we want to believe that. But when we walk outside into those doors, or when they go outside, they say, let's make sure that we don't get CJ nothing. Because that's the conversations they had outside of us, right? So we have to be mindful of that and make sure that we're building with like-minded individuals so that we can combat stuff like that and have conversations like we having right here, right now. That's important.
Facts.
So I hope I dropped the jewel for y'all.
You did. And you did it the way that, because he wouldn't listen to me, because I tell him just don't trust white people. But thank you.
That's way too extreme.
Yeah, he said it way better. I'm just saying. One day I'll make you watch Roots. Kizzy trusted the white
Well,
person.
yeah, if he saw Roots, was Mike Brady in there when he was the good matter.
I hear you. As we come around the corner, I want to do two things. What generational curses are you trying to break? And what's your fondest memory of your father or grandfather? And then I'll let Centrell have the last word.
Okay, so generational curses. The biggest generational curse that I'm having is being able to listen. Like really listen, not listen to respond, listen to understand, and listen to really, direct. Because a lot of times you already know what you want, and so you just be like, this is what you need to be doing, and that's that ego that we was talking about earlier. That's ego all the way. I know because I done, and this is what it is. But in reality, it don't mean that you can get to 4 a bunch of different ways. 1 + 3, 3 + 1, 2 + 2, 4 + 0. It's still 4. So there's a lot of ways to get to 4. So you have to be able to listen and understand, and then at some point articulate it to other people so that they can listen and understand. And I think that that's the thing that I'm trying to break, is my ability to listen, to understand before I respond. Like, okay, let me do this. Let me think about it first. I used to be like, I think quickly, so therefore let me respond quickly. That's something, and my father thinks quickly and he responds quickly. My grandfather thinks quickly, he responded quickly. And those are things that have been going on. And so I'm trying to break that. That's my generational curse. Is to be able to listen.
And what's your favorite and most fondest memory of your dad?
I don't know. I got a bunch of interesting memories of my dad, because my dad is more my friend than he is my dad. And I think I don't know if that's a good thing per se, because the things that I remember with my dad, they're fun things. Like, I remember my dad when I was in high school, renting me a hotel room and buying us liquor so that we could, when we graduated from high school, that was my high school graduation, was that, right? And so my homie, AKA my dad, set me up with a room and liquor, but now from that, I turned into a promoter, so my business and marketing and all that stuff came from that moment. It's an interesting dichotomy, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's what set me up for the rest of my life as a promoter, which turned into, other business ventures, but it started off as promotion. But I would say that would be my fondest memory, and not because it was a good memory. It was because it was a moment where he wasn't necessarily my dad, and so that's a memory, that's a memory, and then on my grandfather, probably going to My father's father, probably going down to Chattanooga and meeting all my family that I didn't know, you know, so going down there, learning his history because I didn't know anything about him. And then my mother's father, probably the biggest memory that I have from him is just going hunting. He used to take me hunting and fishing and all that kind of stuff too. So I would say those are the biggest memories that I have.
The generational curse I'm trying to break is emotional disconnectivity. I'm trying to be there, and I guess that would be a part of listening and being empathetic, but not responding in anger. So I think I'm trying to break the generational curse of anger. I understand the human function of anger, but I try not to make that my default, my go-to reaction with things. I think I would add the second would probably be break the generational curse of brokenness, and I'm talking in all ways, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and financially. Tied to my, men in a broke family. So that. My fondest memory of dads, and like I said, my dad was a couple. I remember when he was teaching me how to drive, one thing was missing from the lesson was expressway driving. And when you learn how to drive, the Dan Ryan, for those who watch in Chicago, it's like the Daytona 500 with no rules. So I remember just looking, we'd be driving down there, he'd be like, don't get on that, don't know, son. And so, but I also felt something was missing from the dang on experience, right? So I know how to navigate these streets, but what's down there? So I said to him, Pops, I want to learn how to drive on the expressway. He smiles at me with this like, and so he's like, yeah. He's like, cool, we're gonna learn how to drive on the expressway. So he told me at emergency, I want you to stay on it until I tell you to get off. So we driving. We pass downtown, all right, I'm over it. I got the experience. He like to merge over this way. So we getting over towards 294, going to Wisconsin, 94. And then he's like, okay, you gotta pay attention. It gets rough here. They don't cut you off. So I'm panicking, I'm freaking out. We go through the north side where the thing. Next thing I know, we all the way by the toll road going to Wisconsin. This fool decided he wanted a Reuben sandwich from this truck stop he visited 5 years ago and used me as an excuse because he knew when he was sick, my mother wouldn't let him take the car that far. And used teaching me how to drive to go to Milwaukee, right outside of Milwaukee, to get a goddamn Reuben sandwich. And when I tell you, that was the best Reuben sandwich I ever had, and just started my love of Reuben sandwiches. But also, I was so mad, like, this, you gave me mild heart attacks. I couldn't breathe. The second thing I saw was him as a protector. And so he was a cop. And so he was breaking up a robbery of the corner drugstore. And he saw me, and he decided in that moment he had to make sure I was safe in apprehending the suspect. And so he was mad at me for a little while, for like, why you come out the alley? I saw you. And I was like, I was trying to see what the commotion was. Wasn't nobody running. Everybody was oohing and ahhing. But that made me realize that I had him wrong. He did value his family over and above law enforcement, because he really, really was trying to, he literally stopped having a shootout to make sure I was okay. And so, and I wasn't nowhere near it. And from what everybody I heard later said, he had dude in his sights. He could have took him out. But something, when he glanced over and saw me at the alley, he darted over there and he was firing to make sure I didn't come out of the alley. And so I will always appreciate that moment. And so it was all right off of 82nd and Racine. I will never forget it. And it was like 90, 84, 85. I will never forget it. So, all right, Boyo, you are last person, man. So what generational curses? That's things that pass on to father and son that are not healthy. And then what's your fondest moment of?
Generational curses. Biggest one is that I'm definitely working on, trying to break from the family. Temptation of women. Why? Because especially when it comes to my uncles or pop side of family, he's not the only one with 3 or more kids. He actually has third or second most. Him, okay, he's gotten better, kind of, but they don't know how to stop having kids with women that they see as beautiful, and they just don't go that past that part. They think, okay, this is it. This is one because she's beautiful. She looks beautiful, and I just sit there and I just stare and I think, okay, how long is this one gonna last? And even when they do find someone beautiful, it gets worse because they know this is the one, and that could be the one. But then you want to have even more kids with that one. And so it's like, can y'all pockets really afford to take care of 15 kids?
No.
And that's the reality of it. I know you love this person. You know, you see a lot of good things. But A, is this really the right person? She could be the most beautiful person in the world. But she just doesn't connect with you on a way that no one can even explain, not even you. Is that really the right person to have kids with? And B, even if this is that one person, you got to realize when to say, okay, that is enough. I love you, and I would love to have more kids with you. But we got to stop, or else we will go crazy after a while.
Okay. And what's your fondest memory of your old man?
First, I want to talk about my grandfather, his father, because his experiences with his father, not the same person I remember. Like, they were two completely different person when it was him and it was me. Because and this is something that I've always like cherished the moment, even as a kid. Every time I came around with a report card, there will be no questions asked, no exchanges, because I was always a good kid, the ones getting the A's and B's in school. So they just knew as soon as they saw it, he would just get up. He was like, all right, go get your coat, and we're going to take you to Toys R Us. Like, no questions asked. He just looked at it, got up, told me to get up, we're going to Toys R Us. Always, always happened. And that just made me smile even as a kid because it's Toys R Us. But even as I got older, I still smile. I smile even more because it taught me, ever since I can remember, it taught me that if we put in the work, we will be rewarded eventually. And whatever it is that makes us feel nice. As a kid, of course, it was toys. It was going to be toys. Because why not? But even as an adult, even as I'm working right now, I always have those memories because it taught me. As I put in that work and I make the effort and I be ambitious in the work I'm doing, the reward will pay off. Like, I'm making a very good impression at the job I'm in 2 weeks in already because I go in above and beyond the work they hired me to do. I try to do more and more just to show that, hey, I am dedicated. I want this. I don't want to let you down. And so that's something that always stuck with me. Now, in terms of my and even with my other grandfather, just the little memories. My mother's father, because I also lived with him, and I have memories with him. And just the little things, really, just to see like what a family man is like. Like, I haven't had experience of what a family man isn't like. Somebody that's like married, love their wife, try to do the most they can, just always be there for their children, always keep the family close. Because he always did that. And even just the little things, just like making time out of the day, even if you're tired. He does the same thing, but as a kid, I was always raised whenever just seeing him to show that, hey, always make time out of your day for your loved ones. So those two memories are like two key memories I have with both my grandparents. But with him, the best memory. So this is a hard question because he knows that we've done a whole lot together, a whole lot. But I would have to say it would be the times we were traveling on a road together. Because we've gone to a lot of places. We went to Atlanta, we went to DC, um, just wherever. And there would be times where we would have to take he would drive, he would take a mega bus, we'd just be on the road. And just those moments of just being on the road with my pops, just cracking jokes, laughing, and just being at ease. that's always like been a huge thing for me. Just a huge thing. Just like I don't have to worry about much except for, what we're gonna do when we get there. That's like my only worry. But here with my pops, we're on the road. Even recently, I had craving for White Castle. And here in Champaign, there is no White Castle. There's not even a place that really sells sliders. And so I'm like, God, I really, really want some White Castles, but I know there's nowhere around me. And so I originally talked to my brother, like, man, I can't believe there's a White Castle around here. I really want some. And he was like, ask Pops. I almost chuckled. I almost laughed. Like, you really think he's going to stop and drive up for like 3 hours, almost the entire evening, just to get me some White Castle? Are you crazy? He was like, yeah, what's the worst that can happen? You can say no. And so I'm like, you know what? Let's see what happens. I can use a good laugh. And then I said, like, man, Pops, I really want some White Castles, but place like an hour, 2 hours away from here. He's like, okay, guys, I'll get dressed. We're gonna go. And I stopped and froze for a second, like, are you serious? You really are about to drive 3.5, 4 hours there and back for White Castle? He was like, yeah, come on, we will take the church van. I just sat there stunned. I'm like, I must be dreaming, because I thought he was gonna laugh because this sounds ridiculous. But no, we ended up driving all the way to Chattanooga, and we got White Castle.
Not Chattanooga. Kankakee, which is about an hour away from here.
Yeah, like hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on like how it is, how it is. So I just remember it was like the sun was still up, and then after drove, the sun was starting to go down, and by the time we got back, it was nighttime. So I know we were on the road for about a good 3 hours, three and a half, and just those memories, just being on the road, just enjoying the travel. I think that's the best memory of my father I have, because there's always something. There's always something.
Indeed.
Something crazy going on.
Indeed.
Even when I'm not there, even if it was like they dropped me off somewhere, then they decide to go on a trip, something always happens. Always.
That's fair. Well, listen, that's our time. We are out of time. I want to thank the Healing Academy. I got to connect with you, Brother Brian, get your information. I want to thank Brother Brian, Brother Rodney, Sister Natalie, and of course my man Andre, and Les, who really brought a lot to the conversation. And I'm not just saying it, I learned a lot about my son. I'm over here taking notes so we can talk about some of this stuff later. I learned a lot about him, so I want to thank him for going. He's the shy kid, but I keep telling him you got to call him. Something about it. When the lights and mic come on, he come on. So I definitely appreciate it. I love you, boy. Thank you for being with us. I call him boy because back when we was little, people said it was Homer and Bart because I would, or Homer and Lisa, or something. I forgot what it was, but it's just stuck. But this is my number one. I love him. I appreciate him. And God bless you all, man. Listen, reach out to the Healing Academy so we can continue doing this work. Reach out so we continue healing the men and making better father and sons. God bless y'all. We out.
Thank you guys so much. I mean, I learned so much through this conversation. Listen, you talking about you taking notes. I had to keep turning the page. I got so many notes over here. I'm so excited that you guys blessed us with your time, your experience, your energy, your wisdom. Again, I learned so much. And the main things that I learned from this conversation, I hope that we can implement. We started to talk right before we went live about how we can make these things tangible for men in the community. So we will definitely be following up with all of you on how we can get into our communities and really create change for our young men and give them mentorship and give them guidance. Because the things that I heard you say the most across the board, other than self-care was in there. Okay, self-care. Men deserve self-care. And I know that a lot of men get overwhelmed and stressed and, financial responsibilities and being providers. It's not easy being a Black man specifically, but you deserve to be supported. You deserve to feel your emotions. You deserve self-care. You deserve rest. You deserve all of those things. And so we're going to talk about that, and we are definitely going to further this conversation. But the things I heard across the board were healing. Brian, thank you so much for sharing your story about your grandfather and how that impacted your father and how that impacted you. We need to heal from these generational curses and traumas, but first we have to know about them. So education and history is another thing that is really, really powerful and that we have to dive deep into and learn, because once we know who we are, once we learn and know our situations, then we can truly heal. And another thing that was said is that you have to learn to love yourself. And when you learn to love yourself, you can learn to love everyone else, especially the people who look like you, because that community is so important. And so as we continue on, I just want to make that point before we leave out that those things that you all were mentioning is what the Healing Academy is all about. Healing. That's in the name.
Can I just add something that is very healing? And I want to thank you, Reverend Thomas, when you told CJ you love him.
Absolutely.
I adore and appreciate fathers that publicly and privately, hopefully, but definitely publicly, privately, however you do it, tell your kids you love them.
Yeah.
I think some people miss that opportunity. They assume that the child just knows it. Whatever the case, I appreciate the fact that you said it out loud to him today. And continue being a great dad.
Thank you so much. Thank you
to both of you. And CJ, I know you ain't in no rush. We already had that conversation. I know you ain't in no rush. But I love what you said about it's not just all about the looks, but finding the right woman and making sure they have the right characteristics and traits to have children. So one day when you do find that right person to have children, I know based off the things that you've said today and the things that you've learned from your father and your grandfather along the way, and I hope that you learned from Brian through this conversation, that you will be an amazing father. So years from now, when the Healing Academy is having the umpteenth anniversary of this conversation, you come on with your son and we can have a heart-to-heart there as well. But I was just saying that all of the things that you all brought up in the conversation that men need to learn and grow and teach, and the things you're working on within yourselves are the things that the Healing Academy teaches, and the things that we are all about are pillars that Rodney mentioned at the beginning of the conversation. CJ said it through the conversation, it's mental. All of the things that we're fighting and the things that we're battling, and Brian said it as well, it's historical. These are the same things we've been fighting and battling, but we have to tell our children, you've all said this part, we have to teach our children the truth on who they are and then who is against us and how we can work together and be better together, minus ego and a whole lot of other things, to come together as a community, to be the best we can individually and as a whole. So again, thank you guys. And for the replay on this, for anyone who came in late, please follow the Healing Academy page. You can find the recap there. You can also find it on our YouTube page. And before you gentlemen leave, because I realized you weren't going to do this, please let the audience know where they can find more of you, your work, and your talents.
Where to find me? Very simple. I am all over social media, though I'm at the behest of my son. I heard him today and a few others. I may be taking a social media sabbatical. But for right now, you can find me at www.bethelame, BETHEL, AME, Champagne, CHAMPIGAN.org, or simply my name, Reverend Terrence L. Thomas on Facebook. You can find him, CJ Hall, on Facebook.
I'm barely on social media, so forgive me if I don't respond as quickly. I've never been like a super social media guy, which is ironic for like people I know. But I'm primarily the camera guy during Sunday's worship. You probably heard of me as he calls me Super Dope Producer CJ. He's the one that I'm the one that he abuses on screen. When he's on screen, I'm behind the camera. So just keep that in mind. But I want to thank all of you for allowing me to be here with my father, because I've never really done anything like this.
Yeah,
This was this was pretty fun. This was pretty fun. So thank you so much to the Healing Academy for having us here, and we hope to do something like this again soon.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that you guys got to have this experience together. It was beautiful to watch. I was all in the comments like, yes, yes. Brian, where can the people find you?
Well, you can find, well, I said I was representing Gorman House Publishing. So you can find me at Gorman, www.gormanhousepublishing.com, or www.enterthecity.com. And if you're looking for me on social media, it's bgorman357 on across every social media platform.
All right, awesome. So you all will definitely see these brothers again on our platform, hopefully in person, because we're going to work this thing out where we can pass this information along, not just virtually, but in person, and work on some of the things that we are all saying that we all need to work on. So thank you guys for being with us. Again, go follow them individually. Follow the Healing Academy for more great conversations and events to come. We also have some classes coming up, so check out our website for more information. It's www.weheal.org, because we are doing the healing work to break these generational curses and traumas to be the best that we can be. All right, you guys, have an amazing day. Thank everyone virtually for being with us, and we'll definitely be with you all soon.
All right, have a good one.